Everything you will ever achieve in this life will not begin with action. It will begin with how you see yourself. Listen carefully. There are men who work harder than you, who know more than you, who try harder than you, and still they stay in place, year after year, decade after decade. And then there are others who simply seem to have decided to become different people, and the world around them began to rearrange itself. Doors opened, people made way, opportunities found them, not the other way around. What's the difference? Not skill, not connections, not luck. The difference is identity, the way they held themselves in their own mind. Machiavelli understood this 500 years before psychology existed. He watched kings who had everything and fell, and exiles who had nothing, yet returned and seized everything, possessing only one thing, an unshakable self-image. Today, 7 principles, not motivation, not affirmations. These are surgical truths about how to rewrite your self-image so that the world cannot help but respond. If you're ready, write, "I see myself," in the comments right now. Let's begin. Most men carry their past like an ID card. Quote 1, quote 2, quote 3. And every time they say that, they aren't describing reality. They are choosing an identity. Machiavelli wrote something that most readers skip. He said, "A ruler who defines himself by past defeats has already lost his next battle, because he enters it as a defeated man." Do you understand what that means? Your past is data. It is not a verdict. It is not a ceiling. It is simply information about where you have been. But who you are right now, that is a decision you make every morning when you open your eyes. You can decide to be a person shaped by circumstances, or a person who uses circumstances as raw material. One decision keeps you in a cage. The other makes you an architect. From this moment on, every time you catch yourself thinking, "I am this way because," stop that sentence. Replace it with, "I am becoming." This is not naive optimism. This is a precise strategy of power. Here's what no one tells you about confidence. Real confidence is not what you feel when everything is going well. It is what you hold on to when everything is falling apart. Machiavelli studied Cesare Borgia, one of the most dangerous men of his era. Borgia lost armies, lost allies, lost territories. And every time, he walked into the next room as if the losses had changed nothing about who he was. That is not arrogance. That is an anchor of identity. When you let circumstances define your self-image, you become a weather vane. Things go well, you're confident. Things go badly, you're broken. People sense this instantly, and they treat you exactly the way you treat yourself. So the rule is simple. Your self-image is non-negotiable. You can lose money, but not dignity. You can lose a position, but not your core. You can lose a round, but not the conviction of who you are. This is the first wall the world cannot break through. Write __ quote _0 _ in the comments if you understand what I'm talking about. Most men wait. They wait for someone to tell them, "You are ready." They wait for proof from the outside world. They wait for results to give them permission to think of themselves differently. And in that waiting, a life passes by. Machiavelli was ruthless on this point. He wrote, A prince does not receive the crown, he takes it, not because he is crude, but because he has already decided inside himself who he is, and the world merely confirms it. Permission for a great self-image is not issued from the outside. It is adopted from within, and only from within. Do you know what happens to a man who starts thinking of himself one level higher? He starts making choices one level higher. He starts rejecting what he used to accept. He starts demanding of himself what once seemed foreign. And 6 months later, the world looks at him differently, because he first looked at himself differently. This is not magic. This is mechanics. Anxiety is always a signal of the same thing. Deep down, you think you're falling behind, that others are ahead, that time is running out. And that thought destroys you faster than any enemy. Because from a state of anxiety, you make decisions like a cornered animal. You settle for less. You react instead of act. You rush into places that should be entered slowly. Machiavelli watched the greatest strategists lose, not because they were weaker, but because they let impatience command instead of reason. A man who sees himself as someone who has time moves differently. He doesn't jump at the first opportunity. He waits for the best one. He doesn't respond immediately. He responds correctly. He doesn't run toward the goal. He walks toward it with the cold certainty of a man who knows it isn't going anywhere. Switch your self-image from "I am late" to "I arrive exactly when I need to." And watch how the quality of every decision you make changes every time you are used. It does not begin with someone else's intention. It begins with your own self-image. People who are easy to use see themselves as those who need to prove their worth. They need to be needed. They need approval. They are afraid to say no, because no means risking rejection. And this need for approval is written on them so large that those who know how to read people see it instantly. Machiavelli was blunt. A ruler who needs the love of the people depends on the people. A ruler who is content with his own judgment is free. When you start seeing yourself as someone whose value does not require validation, something changes in the way you carry yourself. In a room, in a conversation, in negotiations, in relationships. People feel it as magnetism, but it is not magnetism. It is a core of identity that does not bend under social pressure. You don't seek approval. You give it or withhold it. You don't prove your worth. You demonstrate it or you walk away. That is what it means to be unusable. Write "free" in the comments if this resonates. There are two types of men. The first wakes up and looks at what the day has brought, reacts, adapts, survives. The second wakes up with a map. He knows what he is building. He knows where every action of his is moving. He is not living, he is constructing. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a river. When it is calm, anyone can swim. But when it floods, only the one who has already built dams and canals can direct it where he wants. Most men build shelter only when the storm begins. Architects build before it. When you change your self-image from "I am surviving" to "I am building," every day becomes a brick. Every decision becomes part of a structure. Every sacrifice becomes an investment, not a loss. And one day you look back and understand, while others reacted, you were raising a building. one that now stands and will stand after you. Here is the last one, and the strangest, and the most important. Neuroscience confirms what Machiavelli knew intuitively. The brain does not distinguish between lived experience and a sufficiently convincing, imagined one. When you constantly see yourself as someone who is still only trying, you make the decisions of a man who is trying. You move with the uncertainty of a man who is trying. You radiate the energy of a man who is not yet sure. But when you begin to hold the self-image of someone who already is what he wants to become, not pretending, not lying, but holding the identity of your future self right now, your decisions change, your standards change, what you accept changes, what you reject changes, and the world, slowly, inevitably, begins to reflect what you broadcast from within. This is not mysticism. This is the mechanism of identity. You become who you see yourself to be, long enough and deeply enough. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must be such, and seem such, simultaneously. But deeper than that, he must first be such inside. Because everything external is merely a projection of the internal. Start with the image. The rest will follow." We have gone through 7 principles, 7 ways to change how you hold yourself in your own mind. But here is what lies beneath all of this. The world does not see you. The world sees a reflection of how you see yourself. If inside there is a man waiting for permission, the world will keep you waiting. If inside there is a man defined by his past, the world will remind you of it at every turn. But if inside there is a man who has decided without conditions, decided without guarantees, decided once and for all, the world begins to rearrange itself. Not because it is kind, not because life is fair, but because you have stopped being someone who is easy to stop. Machiavelli did not write about manipulation. Deep down, he wrote about one thing: a man so sovereign within that external circumstances lose their power over him. That is what you are building now. Not an image for others, not a mask, a true, unshakable, self-chosen self-image. Write, "I see myself" in the comments right now. Not because I ask, but because this is the first act of the new image. A man who has decided to see himself differently does not stay silent. He declares. I'll wait for you in the comments.